But also we had a fourth panellist, Dr. Niamh Lowe, who's a psychologist, who again has a very interesting, complicated story. Interestingly, she acquired her brain injury after she had did her degree, and then her thesis, which I found fascinating, was on brain injury and loneliness. And brilliantly, she couldn't be with us because she just became a mum 2 weeks ago. So give her a round of applause. Into the universe. But ever the hard-working striver, she has recorded a lovely video for us about her story. So before we dive into the panel, we'll watch Dr. Niamh Lowe's video, please.
My, I suppose, journey in brain injury started in 2010. So I had just finished my undergraduate degree in psychology in the May 2010, and then in that July I was involved in a road traffic accident. So it was a single vehicle incident, so there wasn't anyone else involved. There was oil on the road, the car slipped, spun, and I hit a tree. So, and I was unconscious, so I don't have any memory of, being brought to hospital and all that. I was transferred up to Dublin at that time. It was a local hospital I had been admitted to first. And so I was in a coma for 10 days at that time. It was diffuse axonal injury was the I suppose diagnosis, and so yeah, they weren't sure if I was going to wake up from it. I did, but when I came around, I couldn't talk or communicate, or my short-term memory was quite impacted. I couldn't walk, so there was a lot of I suppose quite physical and quite physical, like visible injuries. But all in all, I think between the local hospital, the hospital in Dublin, and the rehabilitation hospital, I was kind of in an inpatient for about 5 months around that time. And I suppose at that stage in hospital, and kind of in the early days after the injury, and when I say early days, probably even up to a year post accident, I was very focused myself and my family, I suppose, and friends on the physical kind of markers. So, my walk, my gait, getting back driving, kind of increasing independence, that took my focus. And I suppose it wasn't until maybe a year post accident where my emotional kind of processing of the event and the adjustment afterwards kind of came into, I suppose, became more obvious. And at that stage, my parents were kind of reaching out to the community organizations, like brain injury community organizations, saying Niamh's mental health is kind of deteriorating here. She could do with some psychological input. And psychological input kind of came at that time, again, in the kind of neuropsychological assessment, battery of tests, looking at how I was functioning cognitively. So that kind of wasn't maybe meeting the emotional need or the trauma processing part. I suppose I felt very much shattered entirely. I looked, again, it's that kind of invisibility aspect of brain injury, but I looked as I had maybe prior to the accident, but I felt completely broken and shattered, and that wasn't really being addressed by services. Well, that was my experience at the time. So what happened, kind of, even I was kind of calling out for it, my parents were calling out for it, but I suppose my emotional needs weren't really met by services going through. So it ended up that my mental health did deteriorate kind of further, depression and suicidality, I suppose. And and I was admitted to a psychiatric an inpatient unit for 2.5 months, I think. And it was there that I suppose I had access to psychology and psychotherapy, and maybe more the emotional processing, trauma processing of the event itself, and kind of the adjustment I've had to make in my life since the accident was acknowledged for the first time. And that, I suppose, allowed me to heal a little bit, or started the healing process, and started the process of me being able to acknowledge to myself what had happened, and that this wasn't just a physical injury.
That's it, Brent.